And today let's talk about possibly the most impactful figure in all of Night City. Or in all of Cyberpunk, that is. Rache Bartmoss. Now I know, this one's kind of controversial, but by the end of this video, I think I'll have you convinced that this guy is the most important figure in the history of Cyberpunk, if you aren't already. Let's just start from the very beginning. So Rache Bartmoss was born in 1992. Now, we don't really know anything about his parents, and they're not super relevant, because what we would know is that at 4 years old, Rache began net running, and he was 4. So, I mean, he used his real first and last name, and, you know, he wasn't really taking any internet precautions. He started when he was 4. 4 years old, he started net running. Every single year of his formative years, he spent in the net. He spent learning and exploring and understanding the net. He would try every single interface that he could get his hands on, from Zetatech to Arasaka to whoever he could get his hands on. I don't even know if those existed back then. Well, they did. So some time would pass and Bartmoss would eventually become like, you know, a young teenager, and he would want some money. But he didn't want to pick up a normal job like working at fast food or anything like that. Nah, he wanted to do what he loved, and that was the net. So for a while, he would go from company to company, writing software for different people. His skill was undeniable, but you gotta remember, I mean, dude, he's literally like 13 at this time, like 12, 13 years old, but he would get moved around because he was a kid and immature. He would eventually get caught double-crossing some of these companies that he worked for, essentially meaning that he was writing software for one company and giving the software to another and kind of making double the money off of one thing. Now, eventually he would get fired for that because, like I said, he got caught, and he would later, you know, just jump into the databases of those companies and clean his own record so that no one knew about it so he could keep getting hiring. So then in 2004, he worked for a company called CCI Development. He worked for them for like a whole year without doing anything wrong. You know, he decided he actually wanted to just do normal work for a year. And during this time, he created what is called a demon program. Now, we'll jump into the demons a little bit just so you have a better understanding of what they are. Essentially, a demon is just a program that can run multiple programs. So let's say you have a worm program and you have an icebreaker program. They can both work simultaneously within one program now called a demon. That's what these demons were, and they were the first of their kind, so they were extremely valuable. And then, for that same company that he made the demons for, he was later fired because he would post a political movie into the company's database so that every time anyone logged on, everybody would have to watch it. He was, of course, like I said, fired for this. Then he would just start to kind of sell source code for the demon programs. He would sell it to a bunch of different software companies and kind of just tell them that they were the only ones getting it. And, well, this worked. Bartmoss became really rich. So at the age of 17, he and Spider also would meet for the first time because Spider hunted Bartmoss down because Spider's dad was in a corp, and that corp was trying to erase Bartmoss's ID. So in the net, everybody has an ID or an SIN, which is, you know, it's really the same thing. It's kind of like your social security number in the net in the Cyberpunk world, or really your social security number in general. Without an SIN, you can't get like a driver's license or a passport or really a job or really anything like that. Like you really need this SIN. Well, it turns out Spider's dad, who worked for a pretty powerful corporation, found Rache Bartmoss, and Spider's dad has had enough of Rache's blatant disrespect to all of these corporations. He would hunt down Rache's SIN and attempt to delete it from the system. Like I said earlier, this would be a major problem. Rache would no longer be able to get a job, he wouldn't be able to travel anywhere, he wouldn't be able to get an apartment, a house, he wouldn't be able to do really anything aside from making money and then turning that into cash and then hoping he could find places that wouldn't really care about his SIN, which, to be fair, in the world that he lives in, it wouldn't be that hard to do. But it would definitely make life a bigger hassle, and it's not something that he wanted to do at all. Spider and Rache would become essentially inseparable over the net. These guys would be best friends, and he would train Spider in really everything that he knew, which is why Spider became such a notable and amazing netrunner. I mean, it's not the primary reason. She was already good on her own. I mean, to be fair, she was able to track down Rache Bartmoss. She became much more skilled when she had a literal child of the net teaching her everything that she could possibly know. It was for the next couple of years that Spider, Bartmoss, and these two guys named Dog and Edgar. So they would just run through the entire net, going through corporate data fortresses, terrorizing the corporations, simply because they didn't like them, and neither did anyone else. I mean, Netwatch would even send programs and hacks to try and come stop Spider and Rache and the entire crew, and they would just demolish them, just absolutely terrorize Netwatch. Now, like I said before, Rache was already rich. He sold the demons. It was a super valuable program, so he was extremely wealthy. He didn't have to work for the rest of his life, and he did all this before 20. Bartmoss decides to move to Night City. South Night City to be exact, right on the edge of the combat zone. When I was playing the game Cyberpunk 2077 and I was playing Phantom Liberty, the DLC, one of the buildings on Elizabeth Crest Street, you all know the one if you've played the DLC. You see, what was interesting about this building is that no one lived in it. It was abandoned, and only for one reason, a local said. He said because anybody that stays there, their brain just gets fried. They end up dying. Any netrunners that jack in here are immediately fried. No one knows why. Maybe it's rogue AI. But I also do find it very interesting that one of the buildings that Bartmoss stated to live into was on the edge of the combat zone. Elizabeth Crest Street could be considered on the edge of the combat zone. I mean, it kind of is. Because this next information kind of connects the two even more, so listen up. When Bartmoss moved into this building, he arranged that everybody that did not have a neural implant had to leave the building. You see, because he didn't just move in, he bought the building. Like I said, Bartmoss was very, very wealthy. When they moved in, he would install within them a hidden subconscious personality program. Now, how do you do this? Because, well, you gotta jack in a lot of different times. If you've played the Cyberpunk video game, you would notice that V is very, very cautious of just putting their link into anything, because things like this could happen. When he did that, everybody that lived in this building had a hidden program subconsciously controlling them. Now, this wouldn't take place immediately, but this plan would take him until about 2019 to fully become operational. Everybody in the building was now surveillance and protection for Bartmoss without even knowing it. So jumping back to 2014, a extremely pivotal year for the net, because this is when Ahara Grub transformation algorithms was introduced. This entire thing was a company that came in and reformed the entire net. It was kind of like they dropped a graphics engine on the net. They just dropped a whole new one. It's like when Unreal Engine 5 started coming out. They did this to the net so that it would look more uniform, and that when you went to the Pacifica region, everybody would experience the same thing in this Pacifica region, at least as far as the setting. During this time, when everything was being rebooted in the net, everybody was told to log out so that the net could reset. It wouldn't take very long, but it was very dangerous to stay in. You see, Bartmoss, he took that risk. He stayed in because he had a program that he was working on. A program called the Rabbits. All you need to know is that Bartmoss decided to stay in so that he could implant these rabbits into the net while it was resetting, making his program an integral part of the net. Everybody else unplugged and the net redesigned itself. It was amazing. Bartmoss didn't, and his heart stopped for 10 seconds. And then it kept beating again. Moving on to 2015, because we had to cover that part. Trust me, it's integral. It might seem a little random right now, but it's very, very important. Okay, so moving on to 2020, we are 6 years after he's implanted the rabbits into the newly reformed net. Nothing's happened to those rabbits. They are just dormant. These programs that Bartmoss created, they're dormant, just sitting. In 2020, they had enough and his heart stopped. Now, he was also connected to life support machines, so they supercooled his body, allowing his brain to still live. Since he was connected to the net at the time, his consciousness continued to live on within it. After he physically died, he wanted to contact Spider. 10 months he tried to contact Spider. She's not an easy person to contact, but eventually he would get into contact with Spider. He would let her know that he no longer lived, and he wanted to finish compiling what was called Bartmoss's Guide to the Net. Well, Rache Bartmoss's Guide to the Net, to be exact. And the thing about this is that this book was so expansive, so detailed on the net, that it is the book that you use in real life to understand parts of the game that involve the net. I'm not sure that there are many fictional characters that have a feat of this magnitude. He is so knowledgeable about the net that he has broke the fourth wall and is necessary for the reader to learn about the net. I mean, okay. In 2021, Militech would contact Bartmoss because they wanted help against Arasaka in the Fourth Corporate War. The Fourth Corporate War was by far the most horrendous and horrific war of the entire Cyberpunk year. I mean, dude, it was bad. It was bad. He would be convinced by the net, Alt Cunningham, and he would attack Arasaka from the net, and he would locate Soul Killer. Soul Killer is Arasaka's greatest weapon at this point because it's a program that Alt Cunningham had created that allows someone to put their mind into the net. And this allowed their mind to do things in the net while they, the human, would be able to function normally outside of the net. This essentially allowed for you to have like a shadow clone in the net. This was an extremely, extremely valuable program. Arasaka would then steal the program and make what they called Arasaka 2.5. Or sorry, Soul Killer 2.5. And what Soul Killer 2.5 was, well, it would make a shadow clone, but it would kill the main. So if someone plugged in and they got Soul Killer 2.5 uploaded to them, their main body would be killed, and then a duplicate of them would be made in the net. And Arasaka would use this duplicate to torture them. They would torture the duplicate and get any information that they possibly could. And this is how Arasaka was able to get an edge in the war, because they were essentially uploading Soul Killer 2.5 into Militech's officers' cars and officials' cars. The officials would just get in their vehicles to drive, and you gotta plug in for that. Or at least in many cases you have to plug in if you don't have a driver. Now, you see, I know, I said that Bartmoss in 2020, he died for real. Like, I know that's what I said. But in 2022, Bartmoss actually died for real, okay? Because like I said before, his brain was still in the net. But in 2022, his signal would get tracked by Corps, and they would raid his building. Because when his building was raided, that means that his body was found. And his body was in a life support machine. At the end of the day, it was in the dump in Night City. So clearly, they didn't have their hands on it. But at this point, Bartmoss was officially gone. Now, he might honestly have not been dead. There's plenty of rumors that say Bartmoss could still be alive in 2077. As far as we know, Bartmoss is gone. Right before he died, remember those rabbits I was talking about? Yeah, he would release those. Now let's talk about what a rabbit is. Now, you see, rabbit is actually an acronym. It stands for Roving Autonomous Bartmoss Interface Drones. Now, it's not an overly important name, but the important part is that they're extremely powerful viruses. Okay, so Bartmoss essentially created viruses, and the goal of these viruses was to go to corporate data fortresses and leak all of their information and then destroy the fortress. Now, they were able to do this. All of these rabbits were actually very successful at this. A ton of corporate information got leaked, and with that being said, a ton of corporations were trying to protect that, so they were destroying parts of the net. Not only was that happening, but the rabbits were also destroying the net. You see, they weren't just getting into the corporate data fortresses. They were infecting the entire net itself. I mean, they were going into data fortress after data fortress. No one was safe. If you tried to protect yourself, they would take you out, because the point of these things was to get into a corporate data fortress no matter what. That means that they had to protect against corporate net runners. That means they had to kill kill people. That means that if they went haywire and started to go to every corporate data fortress, actually every data fortress in general, even the regular person would have to defend themselves against these rabbids. Programs, or should I say viruses, even Netwatch couldn't destroy. You could imagine that in a world that is almost entirely on the net, this was a major setback. The entire net was ravaged, destroyed. There was nowhere to go. You couldn't even roam around in the net. So you see, before you could log in, walk down the street to your friend's house, have a conversation. Now, if you tried to walk down the street, these rabbids, they would then infect AI. They would infect AI around the net, causing mutated rogue AI. Meaning that if you were walking down the street, you literally might just get absolutely eliminated because this rogue AI is mutated and it decides to hunt humans. And you see, you don't just die in the net when this happens. Your brain gets fried because you're plugged in. That is the severity of the rabbids. And he had just released them to the entire net. You see, because like I said, in 2014, he made it so that they were a fundamental part of the net. This would lead to what we call the data crash. And the data crash would essentially leave the entire world in shambles. I mean, all of the regions of the net were completely destroyed. You could only access via private networks. Plugging in was extremely dangerous. And the rabbids were so powerful that Netwatch, like I said, they couldn't stop them. So instead of stopping them, they formed what was called the Black Wall. Now, the Black Wall is essentially just a huge wall of ice. And ice is essentially just counteracting the things that are trying to get past it. Now, there's a couple rumors here, though. Some people say that the wall couldn't have been constructed without the help of some rogue AI. Some rogue AI that wanted an existence past the net. This is where a lot of the theories for guys like Mr. Blue Eyes come in. And some people think that he's seemingly some sort of rogue AI, especially since his eyes are blue, and they're not just the color blue as in like his irises. No, they're blue like when you're processing information in Cyberpunk, like when you're paying someone or when you're looking something up. Your eyes turn the color of his, but his, they're always that way. In 2077, Bartmoss is still pretty well known. This has been the life of Rache Bartmoss. If you guys want more like this, make sure you leave that like. And I'm going to be bringing more Cyberpunk videos, but if you guys want more character videos, make sure you let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what your favorite moment in Cyberpunk is, whether it be in the lore or in the video game, anything at all. Let me know. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.